today I picked up a little book that was given to me on the day of my confirmation. It's just called Holy Communion. And I noticed actually that next month I will have been confirmed 50 years. And that means, in that tradition anyway, that means that for 50 years I will have been receiving Holy Communion. And many of you, or some of you anyway, have been receiving Holy Communion longer than that. And yet, in spite of the 50 years of participation with a 3-week rebellious break, I think only 3 weeks, 3-week rebellious break, I have been receiving the gift of Holy Communion, as I know many of you have, relentlessly and persistently. And yet, even though I have 50 years of experience, I am struggling. I have to be honest, when I was forming this homily, struggling to try and put into words what this gift might mean. And maybe, and I'm not being falsely modest, maybe one of the reasons it's hard for me to put it into words is the very first sentence in this little book of prayers, given to me by your Father and signed by him. The best preparation for Holy Communion is a holy life. But maybe the author could have put another sentence after that. And perhaps the only way to live a holy life is with Holy Communion. The holiness of a person, that is the godliness of a person, the Christ-shapeness of a person, depends. At least this is what I glean from the scriptures and the gift, on participation in this sacred action with the rest of the people of God. Why do I presume this? Because it is a gift from Jesus. And I do not believe that Jesus would entrust us with a gift that was not for our good. It's as simple as that. I trust that Jesus will only give me a gift that will be good for me. And so we have done it, we Christians, from the beginning. From the beginning. We know this because Paul says he hands on. This is Paul, one of the first Christians. Paul hands on to those he writes to in Corinth, a tradition that was handed on to him. This was something he received. Much of what Paul writes is the fruit of his own reflection. Deep, deep reflection about who Christ is and the implications of who Christ is for the way we live. We might say it's Pauline thought. But that is not so when it comes to the gift of Holy Communion. It was not his idea. It does not come from him. It has come from the Lord directly. Whatever else may be ambiguous, this is a direct command. So isn't it beautiful, as I've said before, whatever else you could have been doing this morning, you are today doing something that Jesus wants you to do. And I presume you are here in part anyway, because what Jesus wants is what you want. His desire is your desire, or little by little your desiring is being transformed by what he wants. So whatever else can be said about the mystery of Holy Communion, that simple truth is so, that on the night before he was betrayed, Jesus took bread and said in words that are almost unambiguous, yet so full of mystery in the connection. When he takes bread and wine, these material things, and gives to them the significance of his very self his whole life. And although, of course, particularly, he connects them with the sacrifice of the following day, when we proclaim the Lord's death until he comes, Paul says in every Eucharist, yet it is more than that. For what we receive in the gift of Holy Communion, in the body and blood of Christ, is not the dead Christ. We are not feeding on the Christ of the corpus, actually, but on the risen Lord. The one crucified and risen is the one we receive. The Spirit is given, and all things spring to life, says the Scripture. And so the basically inanimate objects of bread and wine, though they are the fruit of the earth and the fruit of human labor too, actually, it can only become bread and wine if men and women work on it, which is itself a beautiful thing. So there will be the calling down of the Spirit, and all things, these things, will spring into life. And the life is the life of Christ. Quite an interesting question, actually. What do you think about things? What do you think about things? Their substance. We often talk about a person being substantial. Well, these days, actually, it can be a euphemism for slightly large. For the substantial person. But actually, when we say a person has got substance, what do we mean? We mean more than what they are molecularly, if I can put it that way. More than what can be discovered empirically when we talk about substance. We talk about depth. We talk about presence. We talk about something more than what could be discovered. Any more that when you weigh a baby, you've got all the information you need about that baby. The baby is more than its weight. It has substance. There are times and there are cultures, and maybe it's inevitable in a secular culture, where things are perceived in terms of their empirical, as it were, evidence. There have been those philosophers who said the only thing you can say has meaning. You can only say something has meaning in those terms. But it's not always been thus, and it certainly isn't thus in most of the world, where things aren't simply what they are empirically. Their substance is not simply found there, but is to be discovered in discovering the will of God who upholds them. This is how to understand, to find the meaning. We know about something as we discover God's will for that thing. And one of the beautiful things about the Eucharist is that in one sense, the whole created order is involved in what we are doing this very morning, in the same purpose. Inanimate objects, bricks and stone, chalice and paten, the stuff of the created order in bread and wine, us, and the invisible world too, as we will be reminded, when angels and archangels are called upon, and the whole company of heaven, those people who you think are so far away because they are dead, are with us. The whole created order drawn together in this sacred action as a sign of God's purpose. And the life that the Spirit brings, for the Spirit is a spirit of unity, of oneness. The accidents, as the ancients used to call it, and Thomas Aquinas calls it, the accidents of the gift are bread and wine. They look the same now as they are there and there, as they will even after the Spirit has been called out. But they are charged and not the same, though they remain the accidents. This happened, by the way, if you've been baptized. For when you're baptized, you may have a longing, particularly if you're, older, or maybe this thing that's going to spring into life from my baptism will be about 6 inches taller than I was before I was baptized, or maybe just a bit better looking, if that's okay. That there'll be some sort of transformation in the accidents of who you are. You will look the same, but you are transformed, you are different. You can no longer be understood without the gift of baptism. You can no longer be understood or find who you are or understand yourself except with Christ. For your life is now bound with his and has no meaning, no substance without him. And what is as true of the incarnate Lord, who is both God and one of us, in a way that cannot be separated, so it is true of the sacraments. And so it just makes, it seems to me, no sense to say, well, it's really just bread and wine. Really. That's the empirical view. But as John Chrysostom says, Christians aren't just those who believe what they see with the naked eye, but with the eye of the heart, with the eye of faith. Yesterday I took communion to one of our beloved members of this congregation, and we were talking, and she said, and she won't, I think she won't mind me repeating this, she said, oh, as I get older, I find it more and more difficult to get rid of my things. I said, oh, is your house full of clutter then? Not clutter. Why can't she easily part with those things? To the naked eye, empirically, she might have a few nice bits, but most of it's probably just a trinket from somewhere or other. A gift from someone, just given, maybe by a goddaughter or someone, but somehow charged with love. This sort of parallels a little bit what in the, one might say, the metaphysical realm of the believer is true about things. And when a society loses touch with that reality, it's when it loses touch with the dignity of every person. For the thing that gives you dignity is that you are charged with glory. Charged with glory. You are not just what can be discovered empirically. You are more. You are more. The bread and wine of the Eucharist is charged with the glory of Christ. That's why it will never be far away from sacrifice, because of his hour of glory, which is his death. But it is also charged with the glory of his ministry. It is charged with the glory of his participation in our human life. It's charged with the glory of his resurrection. It's charged with the glory of his coming at Pentecost. It's charged with glory. Hidden. Hidden manna, hidden food. On the day of Pentecost, the Spirit came as a flame, as one flame, and then descended on the head of each. There will be one bread, one body, available to each, yet remaining one. The gift of the Eucharist is a gift to the whole church, not even primarily a gift to individuals, though it is for each of us. It is for the whole church and unites the whole. It makes us one because Christ makes us one. So for 50 years, I've been receiving this gift. I sometimes, and I've said this before, wondered what I would be like if I had not been receiving this gift. Have you ever thought that, those of you who are communicants? What sort of person would I be if I was not a communicant? If I was not making my way regularly, with an open heart, and with faith, Lord, I believe, help my unbelief, if you were not coming to receive this gift? It must be that you would be different. Though it's hard to measure because you do. It must be that you would be different. For how could one receive this love gift, this food, with an open heart and not be changed? Of course, I know, that even such glorious grace can be resisted, can be worked against. Which is why I suppose the author of that little book begins by saying the best preparation for the gift of Holy Communion is a holy life. Early this morning, when I was reflecting before the 8 o'clock, as I was musing on this gift, I decided to pledge myself to more careful preparation before daring to approach the altar. I invite you to the same commitment. Thanks be to God for this glorious gift, for which I am unworthy.